Hey, Heather.
Hi.
Yeah, I was just thinking about having a chat with you about the skill of leadership, of really how we can approach in different ways to empower others
Hmm.
on our team to be their best selves, to be their best performance. And, one of the things that trips people up a lot is actually communication, interacting with one another. And so I thought maybe we could chat a little bit about that.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, communication is key. And I think there's a lot that people maybe take for granted. Like, I know how to communicate. I know one of the things that we teach in our year-long leadership training program is about different leadership skills. And one of them that may seem basic, but actually is a skill to master is listening. Right. And
Hmm.
if we're at a certain age in a career and we've been successful, we're going to think we do listening great, right? And have not realized what we might not be hearing, and that it's actually a different thing to cultivate a skill that is most commonly referred to as active listening.
I like that term because it's meant to be mindful and conscious, right? And it's actually a very important skill for empathy to think underneath, like when somebody's talking, if we're just in our head and our thinking, well, are they matching my thought? Is this how I think about it? If we're feeling a little bit nervous or under stress and strain, we might have that self protection kicking in. And it's like all about my thinking versus what active listening is like we're actually getting curious about not only what they're thinking, but what that experience is about, right? What they're really trying to convey. It's a whole nother experience to be working together on a team in a common space for common goals and start that space of like, I wonder what's really happening.
Yeah, and it makes me think one of the CEOs we met somewhere along the way in our program, he had shared like even in a team meeting, if someone shares an idea that on the surface might seem terrible, he's really trained himself to say, "Huh, that's interesting. Could you tell me more about that?" And I love that, and it's such a kind of powerful tool for how to be in meetings and conversations differently because you're really listening to understand, you're listening to really connect. Like often when people are raising something, maybe you don't see the problem or you don't agree with what they're asserting, but there's a reason why, like a deeper reason. Maybe something is happening in their area of the business and impacting their team in a way that the rest of us weren't aware of when we made a decision, right? And so they have some different information, which is causing them to raise something, and it lands a little funny in the meeting or something, but it's a great leadership skill to then have curiosity, like, there must be more to this story, or what else is going on? Why did Heather bring this forward? She usually brings very pertinent things forward on this meeting, and I don't know why she's bringing this up. To ask open-ended questions with curiosity. What do you think, Barbara?
I was thinking as you were saying that experience of that particular person who really built a habit. It's
Yeah.
like a pause button we do for ourselves, right? Because I can imagine inside, if we're holding a position and somebody has an opposing thought that they're sharing, immediately we want to shut it down almost because it like doesn't connect. And that's that moment we need to pause and be like, well, what do they know that I don't know? How are they seeing this with a different lens than I am? Like, what can I learn here? And I think that's that growth mindset that's so important more and more today for leadership. That active listening really gives us that skill. And another example where a pretty major restructure of roles and some original team and some new team. And what's really important about the restructure at the moment is the clarity of the roles we're coming into. Even though we've done a couple drafts of what we think it might be, right? It's still coming along. And so there's one gal there who is kind of like a resistor, right? Like she's having a really emotionally hard time working with other new people and not trying to, well, what she's trying to do is hold some territory of how it was, right? Which is totally common.
Yeah.
But what was really cool on the call, I was working with the CEO and the director of ops, kind of a meeting after the meeting. And the CEO said, I think that person might be looking for a sense of certainty and a sense of significance. And I was like, what? Because here we are in this struggling conversation and wanting to turn it around. But he had this moment of deeper listening and said, what's really might be happening in this person's, like, this was really an empathy experience,
Yeah.
but deeper listening, active listening. He's like, what could really be going on here? And that could be so helpful for the compassion and the empathy that comes forward with just that, I wasn't hearing that. Let's look at how we might address more safety
Yeah.
so that this person could find, because we're meeting a need, a human need in a working team, right? That's common. It's something we need to be more aware of.
Yeah, I
Right.
think that's important to highlight. Like human beings, all human beings have different tolerance levels for how much change feels comfortable or not comfortable. And so
Right.
just compassion for all of us who, could feel like, what the heck is happening here when change is happening too fast. And I love
Mm-hmm.
that in that story, I think, because you mentioned this team member had been here longer, I believe. And so the
Yes.
CEO knows them a little better, which I
Mm-hmm.
think allowed him to have the space to kind of say what else could be going on here. But I definitely want to say, too, for anyone listening to this, if you're experiencing resistance from certain team members and there is a charge to it, there's something else going on there. And it really is a fear or a lack of safety, a lack of clarity, a lack of feeling certain if they do the new thing in the new way, they'll actually succeed. And so they're not being difficult or crazy or just not wanting to do the new thing. There's a need that they have, and say it's a lack of clarity. Say, I'm resisting the change because I can't see how this is actually going to work, right?
Right.
So that's good feedback for a leader to be able to notice, like, okay, well, maybe Heather's not fully on board with this because I haven't painted the picture in a way that she knows I'm setting her up for success. And also, if it goes wonky, it's not going to be all on her. Like, so the certainty, even though we can't give 100% certainty how anything is going to go, the certainty is the certainty that I have your back. We're in this together.
In
Not
this
those
together.
the
Yeah.
things. Yeah, we're in this together. Don't worry.
And it's the clue in there, right? It's the clue
Yeah,
in there to create more safety then, right? It's the
yes,
reminder, like, don't push through this. We just got to get them to accept this. There's something really significant here. And often, if one person's feeling that uncertainty or unclarity, that's a great indicator for ourselves as the leader to say, let me back this up a minute, make sure I've painted the picture. One, that we're on the journey together. Two, that, hey, here's how I'm seeing it. Is that how you're hearing it? We can create some safety with clarity and structure. That really helps with people. And the thing about change is that we're kind of saying, well, change is constant. Well, change is the natural rhythm of all things, right? So I think we have to start, that definitely change from technology in business and the internet and the more global experience we have has made it feel in business that things are moving faster and more complexity, too much information sometimes, right?
yes,
But we do have to remember, and I think this is something to create safety and listen into when things are happening. Like when people are like, too much change, it's like, let's go underneath that. Let's listen in to what is the experience in the moment. Because change is too general nowadays. It's like change
yeah.
is how things happen, right? So how can we listen in more and say, how is this change impacting you? What are you seeing that's shifting? Or
What are you most concerned about? I hear you expressing a lot of things about this, but what actually is your biggest concern here? And if you give people the safety to say that, you can get to a resolution, you can get to clarity. You might find out a bunch of people have that same concern, and now we have a fruitful discussion and we have an even better plan going forward. So,
mm,
all of these things are possible in effective teams. But one of the main skill sets we're talking about is developing and continuing to develop your skill of listening, not taking for granted that this is something, I've got that part. Let me learn about the harder part of business, because it comes back to these essential elements all the time. Like, how well are we really communicating? How well are we listening? How much safety are we really creating? So, and
Like, yeah, let me just jump in with this. Is like, do I really want to know? Because I think we have to challenge ourselves sometimes. Like, okay, they're struggling with change. I'm done. Had the conversation. It's like,
no,
no,
that's so true. And some people don't want to know. Like, I've heard from team members, sometimes a point of tension happens in a meeting, and it may seem they're trying to like cut off the other person or something, but it's because, like, oh my God, if Barbara says her thing, I'm going to have 500 more things to do, right? So we have to also agree to set that all of aside so that we can
right.
have certain conversations and consider things that we might do for the business. And all of that, see, all of this is about that container of listening and the safety needed to really have productive conversations and productively use your team to make decisions for your business. And I think that now more than ever, developing these skills to the next level is what's going to set your team apart and really help your business traverse the challenges that it might be facing.
Yeah, yeah. And as you're saying, having compassion, having more empathy, having greater understanding and clarity is so important today. And that skill and that practice to build a habit of active listening actually gives us the opportunity to get it just out of our heads and open more into that compassion, right? That active listening gets into more of the person and the situation more directly. And so it's kind of a speed dial to better interactions and greater decision making.
Well, I love that. So I hope somebody out there watches this and takes that away and practice active listening, actually intentionally practice it, and
Mhm.
let us know how it goes. Let us know what you find out. All right. Thank you so much, Barbara, for being here with me. All right.
Chatting. Take care.